personalization can be awesome for people, right? I go to a website, I'm already logged in, it knows what I like, I'm getting all the content that I want. But we've seen what's happening with social media and algorithms. You can be put into a bubble that really shields you from information that you probably wanted to know and didn't realize you weren't being shown.
Hello and welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North. I'm joined today by Adam Kurzawa, Head of Partner Development for ExpandTheRoom. Adam,
How are you?
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about ExpandTheRoom and the unique value proposition it brings to the market.
Sure. Agency is a digital creative agency, founded 18 years ago, privately owned. We really specialize in helping businesses from startups to Fortune 500s solve interesting business challenges. Usually manifests into some kind of a digital product, which could be completely new, or really radically evolving something that's a legacy product that's been sitting on the shelf digitally for 10, 15 years. Unique special sauce for us, I always think, is that we can deliver large agency quality work at a much lower price point and with much less red tape.
So how has digital creative marketing evolved over the years you've been involved with it, and where do you see it heading?
Sure. Well, in my previous job, I was in music marketing, and it was before the advent of Facebook and social media and all of those things. So it was still very tactical, hand-to-hand, word of mouth, PR people, press releases, that sort of thing. Jumping over into the digital sphere, I mean, it's constantly evolving. Even now with social media really leveling the playing field for people that are not major businesses, being able to jump in and get the word out on something they're working on is just pretty revolutionary, right? It's like, you used to have to pay a lot of money to get that kind of attention. Now you just need to really craft a great message and be, crafty about how you get it out there. From a digital product standpoint, we see that, clients are much more savvy now than they were even 10 years ago when I started at ExpandTheRoom. People didn't know what user experience design was or, good visual design, and they're starting to see the value of that and how that can really improve, their offering.
Talk a little bit about the UX side of things. That seems to be sort of the new marketing, when you're actually providing a great user experience instead of just beating us over the head with some sort of messaging.
Sure. I mean, it helps create word of mouth for a product if it works well on its own. You see it with Apple. You hear people say all the time, I buy a MacBook Pro or I buy Apple TV and I plug it in and it just works. That's by design. And that word of mouth is something you really can't pay for. Someone will just, out of hand, without being a paid sponsor on Instagram, tell you, oh, you should buy this because I have one and it works really, really well. When we think about that, when we're looking at B2B workflows for, airline reservations or, a point of sale for e-commerce or, fintech, whatever it is, getting people from their initial, I have a problem, help me solve it. One of our purpose-driven design principles is usefulness depends on empathy. So if we are solving someone's problem, we're doing their job right. They don't care about the solution we create, they just care that we solve the problem.
It's a fantastic quote. Usefulness creates empathy. I like that. In an era of attention spans, which at last count, I think Facebook said something like 3 seconds was the average.
Sure.
Can you still bring exceptional storytelling within such a tight window? How do you hook them and retain them?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it's really tough. And I don't know that I would want to limit it to that 3-second window. I think, quality always wins over time limit or quantity. So I think if you have something that is more long form and someone's going to get enveloped in the experience, to me that's much more powerful than a soundbite. But the thing about digital marketing and everything that's happening now is the competition level and the noise is so high that I think if you're going to spend that time and effort in crafting a longer narrative, you better make sure that it's something people are going to care about.
Right. I want to go back to something you just said. People care more about their problems than your solutions. Mm-hmm. How do you successfully stick to your philosophy of purpose-driven design and client empathy in your work with those types of challenges?
It's not easy because you're constantly, there's the friction point of clients wanting something at a lower price point or something to happen more quickly, or you've got tons of stakeholders. We really look at it as an opportunity to educate our clients on the value of not just purpose-driven design, but broader design principles. It's one of those careful balances where If we can show them that, you might not have to spend a couple $100,000 to achieve something, you might save a couple million in the long run if we take a long tail view and really do the hard work up front. That's something. And we always say to our clients, we like to have difficult conversations very early. We're not afraid of that because we can rectify those situations and communicate about it versus you're doing things kind of behind a curtain and then delivering at the end, and then there's all these problems. Like, that's a very hard time to have a meaningful conversation.
Right. Are you seeing clients and brands become more savvy and sophisticated when it comes to this type of digital marketing?
Absolutely. And we're seeing, one of the barriers for agencies like ours is not just the competition from other agencies, but brands and companies insourcing this kind of work, right? They're getting more savvy.
Right.
As things like development get more commoditized, with offshoring and yourshoring, you're seeing some of those things starting to bleed into design. We still think the differentiator is the years of experience and expertise that we can bring to the table and the people we have on our team and how we work. That's something we think is fairly, not immediately replaceable.
We touched on it briefly earlier with the attention span shortening year after year, but what are some of the other challenges that you as a creative agency are facing?
Well, there's always, downward pressure, pricing, like I mentioned, other agencies, insourcing. It's for us, a couple years ago when I started, it was much more of a technology discussion where you needed to stay on top of, well, what is the next thing that people want to build their products in? WordPress obviously now for us is one of the top tier solutions for anything website driven. It's less about technology now for us and more about solving a specific need. I think it's a confluence of factors, across the board.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about your website was that you had keep it human, stupid, and keeping emotion at the core of what you're doing because you're reaching people at a very visceral level.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
and how that has been sort of your guidepost in some of your creative.
Sure. We all hear these stories about, robotic process automation and AI and computers taking over our jobs. But the reality is for the next couple decades, at least, we're still building products for people. And it needs to be simple enough that anyone, like with the conversation earlier about Apple type products or things out of the box, if someone can't engage with it right off the bat and have it solve some kind of unique need for them, then we've just missed the mark, right? While there are things like voice skills and Alexa and other things that are starting to pull AI and chat and other things into those experiences, the end user is still a human being. So we always have to keep them front and center and make sure that they're our guidepost when we're designing.
Are there any projects or campaigns that you take the most pride in, that you're most excited about, that come to mind right now? You don't have to name the client if you don't want to, but it's always interesting to hear from a creative side what people get excited about.
Sure. I mean, there's two that jump to mind for me personally. One, it's a couple years old at this point, but I was involved in a 2-year project for a company called CETA, who are a Geneva-based airline IT company. So think reservation and e-commerce systems for hundreds of airlines. So we helped redesign those systems for them and wound up delivering a design system that's now being used across multiple products in their passenger services line. So seeing different airlines from Air India on down the line to some smaller airlines using that system in a smart and efficient way was really rewarding for us, especially spending so much time with that client. The other is some of the work we've been doing with New York Roadrunners. As a runner, they were a client that I personally went after because I've seen the value they've added to my family and my kids running and me as someone who's run 2 marathons now. And we were able to design some fun interactive screens at their run center on 57th Street and are talking about some fun things around the 50th anniversary of the marathon now.
And are you always trying to keep that UX in mind as you're kind of going through and working this? I mean, it's not just a project, it's also something that you as an end user might be interested in.
Yeah, and for example, with the projects at the Run Center for New York Roadrunners, there's a wayfinding aspect of that. I mean, it's a physical space with touch screens. So we had to think about, are these screens in the right placement? Are they the right height for accessibility for people coming in with a wheelchair or differently abled? And are they in the right place to be used for the coaches and the staff there and people walking in? Like all those things are factors before we even think about what's going to be on the screen. You have to think about the screen itself. So yeah, for sure.
That's exciting. We like to ask our guests if there's any book, blogs, or podcasts that you'd like to share with our viewers.
I'm excited about this one. I'm starting to read The Business of Expertise by David C. Baker for two reasons. One, it's a book that's been recommended to me a million times, but several of us from our company are going to a seminar with David around positioning, refining positioning for our agency. So that book definitely dovetails into that for sure. Podcast, I just started, there's a company called The Ready that started a podcast called Brave New Work that's looking at the future of work. That's interesting. I've followed their blog posts for a couple years now, and the podcast started, I think, last week. So digging into the first episode now.
Thank you so much for sharing those. My guest today has been Adam Kurzawa with ExpandTheRoom. Adam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.